Welcome back, everyone, for the afternoon session of the International Coastal Access Symposium. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Devon Taylor, the president of the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, coming to us, I believe, maybe from Jamaica or indirectly from Jamaica. The title of Dr. Devon Taylor's presentation is Plantation Tourism and Beach Rights Beyond Access. Devon is by training a biomedical scientist in the field of immunology, comes from Steertown, St. Anne, a northern coastal town in Jamaica. He is a social, economic, and environmental justice advocate with interests in community deconstruction, rising wealth inequality, land rights, and the exclusion of indigenous and vulnerable people from environmentally critical and economically valuable ecosystems, particularly beaches and rivers, to create environmentally unsustainable infrastructure projects. Devon is an environmental defender and an advocate for the right of nature status for beach ecosystems, seas, and rivers as an environmental tool to protect nature. Devon is also the founding member of the environmental justice movement, Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, or JABEM, which is an equal rights and environmental justice movement that seeks to undo and replace discriminatory beach access, land, and use of the sea policies that are targeted against the Jamaican people. It is a pleasure to welcome you today, and I will give you the floor. Thank you.
All right, thanks for inviting me. It's been a very, great sessions going on so far. So, I'm coming to you today actually from just outside of Washington, D.C. I'll be in Jamaica tomorrow, continuing the struggle. But I just want to put into context, a couple of things today, and I'll be mindful of the time, because I really want to really engage the audience and get some questions. But the sea, has special meaning to Jamaica. As you know, Jamaica was a former British colony. Most Jamaicans are actually of African heritage, over 97% of the country. We've been fighting for liberation for over 400 years. The way how we got to Jamaica was through the transatlantic slave trade. So the sea has special meaning for the Jamaican people. And not being able to access it is also blocking us from honoring the dead. It is our ancestral burying ground. And so what is really unfolding in Jamaica is quite unfortunate, because amongst all these things that we have used the beach for, right, it's a space of repair that we are really losing. I'm going to show you just a small chunk of this video to just put into context the clash that is happening between hotel development and regular citizens.
No, sir, I don't care.
No, so this is private property.
I don't care what.
Answer me now.
All you want to me.
Well, another daddy.
I'm saying.
Yes, so this is private property.
I'm not reasoning with anyone.
Then a quarrel, we a quarrel.
I just give an instruction that once you have that ban, you're not a part of this property.
Okay, so we're not supposed to walk on the beach,
No.
Not even the water?
No.
Not even the water, right?
No.
So that was a confrontation between one of our environmental defender, who is also a plaintiff in a prescriptive case that is seeking to for us to regain access to one of the beaches. So the law that regulates the shoreline in Jamaica is called the Beach Control Act of 1956, and it gave Jamaicans no inherent rights to the beach. Right? We only access beach in Jamaica through permission. And what has happened, pre-1956, Jamaica became independent in 1962. Just on the eve of political independence, this policy was rolled out across the island. There was a shift from, the classical sugar and banana plantation into a more tourism kind of investment along the coastline. So, of course, the colonial hangover wanted legislation that would really protect their asset. Plus, fishermen and all the people of the island were complaining from the 650s that they were being locked out of the shoreline. So the government put this policy in place, and vest the entire foreshore on the floor of the sea, vest that in the crown. Now, currently, it's we only have around 2.8 miles of public beaches that are accessible to the public out of that 494 mile. The rest of it is controlled by the tourism industry. The policy is highly discriminatory, right? It does not give Jamaicans no general right to swim. No general right to bathe, to walk along the foreshore, or to really fish. And it clearly states that no one shall be deemed to have any rights in or over the foreshore of the island or the floor of the sea. So this is the policy upon which the government, is excluding, Jamaicans. So I'm showing you some images of some childhood beaches that I would always attend. I can't do that anymore because of wire fence and government security guards and the police that really blocks you out of these. All of these places are slated for real estate development. The Chinese Arbouin Engineering Company, the Chinese are making a push into Jamaica now, own one of these beaches. And most of Jamaican beaches are geared towards a tourism product. So this model that is in Jamaica is an all-inclusive model that dominates the entire coastline and privatize most of the beaches in the country. So, at the bottom line is all capitalism, right? What is driving this whole thing, is the whole neoliberal economy that, is associated with controlling everything, across the island, right? We know very well as to how the influence of this, kind of political capitalist system works. And so the private sector makes most of the money, which is dominated by foreign-owned, entities. Very small amount of fees go to the government in form of what they call a tourism enhancement fund. But that money is actually redirected back at advertising the country as a premier tourism destination. So that also repatriate in the country, and a very small amount of money. And I'm being modest here by saying it's around 10% that stays in the country. So, the entire island is being, geared towards tourism. What I'm showing you here is from the latest 2025 budget debate presentation that was done last week by the Prime Minister. And I'm showing you road networks and, these red dots show you infrastructural projects that are coming online. And some of these projects that are coming online are moving coastal roads up to 2 miles inland to create more land for more tourism development. Jamaica just went through a category infinity storm, right, Melissa? And that has destroyed one of our historic towns in Black River. The government is using disaster capitalism to take all the lands in Black River, move entire communities, off the coast, to create now what they're going to call now urban centers directed towards tourism. In Montego Bay, the tourism mecca, they're also diverting the roadway off the coastline to open up more lands, and they're doing it towards the western end of the island as well. Within, the northeast, they're taking an entire town, right, and to really recreate a tourism product there. So all that's happening in Jamaica is coastal land is being geared and seen as asset, for expansion and for capitalist interests. And I spoke about this figure here, but these are real data about how much money was made from tourism in 2024 and how much of it stayed in Jamaica. So the leakage is massive and the benefit is, not much to the country. So over the decades, you can see how this, capital is growing in Jamaica. And that is really one of the biggest thing that is driving beach access policy in Jamaica. And we don't benefit, right? And this is why we do see this as a plantation tourism model, because what you see happening in the industry is short-term contracts for the worker. They have no worker protection, long hours. The salary is not good. The environment is untenable, and there is also a repression of leisure because you can work at the hotel, but you cannot enjoy the amenities and use the beach. And that's just a range of the kinds of jobs that hotel workers do. Or there's about 175,000 people that are directly employed within the industry, but another, 200,000 people who are indirectly connected through, tour guides and other, other tools. just got distracted for a second there. So there have been some strikes by hotel workers in 2024, in several of these hotels at the North Coast. And I just kind of highlighting some of the reasons that we just captures about the unfair, working condition, the profit sharing, the management, a slew of, issues. So there's actually this discontent that is connected to the exploitation of the workers within this space. So there, it's just other visuals here, showing you, how these workers are rising up, and they were actually suppressed, within the space. So as I said, you'll have these beautiful resorts, right? But they take all the beaches and they exploit the workers. So classically, it is that. The environmental degradation is really, something, to really witness. This is actually capturing of a mangrove forest being prepared for the development of a hotel. And, this is what they do on the coastline. They will go in and they'll take out every bit of vegetation that is inside there. It's just ecocide, in order to build these hotels along the coastline in Jamaica. And because, we do not have just strong environmental laws in the country, these things are allowed to go on in mangrove forests, and you could see the excavator in there, really taking out these mangroves, getting this property prepared for a hotel to be built. And this is really common along the north coast of Jamaica. So, we know where this takes us, because at one point, Kingston, which is the capital, was actually a tourist space. And I'm just showing you, a hotel that is on the coast of Kingston, and what Kingston coastline looks like today. Right. So the continued exploitation of land, leads to degradation. And you could actually witness it right now. What's happening in Negril, Ocherius, or Montego Bay from an aerial view, you'll see the browning of landscape as the whole place becomes urbanized in order to support this kind of a tourism product. And all of this is attributed to the Beach Control Act of 1956 that actually sees the coastline as an asset for exploitation. So we are experiencing, the dispossession, the disempowerment, the plantation tourism model, all tied into this whole, neocolonialism, manifestation that is happening there. And that is all tied to this law, which our movement is trying to remove in order to bring in new legislation, right? Because how these hotels operate, they get a license, and their license will take them, all the way down to the wet sand, right? All the way down to the, the low water mark, and then no Jamaicans can really access that space. So we need to get rid of these. And, the whole thing is militarized. They can use the police to remove you from here. And there's a part in the policy that says the minister really can grant a license for development in any prohibited area. The minister decision is final, which is that is the minister who controls, who actually oversees the policy. And it happens that that minister is actually the prime minister of the country. So what they're trying to say, we're going to fix this by creating designated beaches for the country. So they're also promoting a segregation model where they're trying to say, we'll build out these 10 beaches for Jamaicans, and then the rest will be for the tourism product. And they just tabled a policy that I just want to, briefly go into. This came out actually last week in their budget presentation. And they're not offering the country inherent rights. In fact, the policy said we'll only have qualified rights based on a set of conditions that the hotel who have the license to the beach will set. Not even the government. The hotel will set the license and to tell you how many people can come here, what you can wear, how do you behave in the space, right? They bring in the policy that they could sell the beach, they could alienate the foreshore, right? They're going to expand an overwater bungalow to take out grass bed to build hotels in the sea, and they're allowing for artificial beaches, which is most of the Jamaican coastline is rocky. It's only 150 miles. Is sandy. Now they're going to allow for the destruction of those rocky interface to create, beaches, artificial beaches to which Jamaicans will not have rights, and they will be immediately divest. They're saying if you want to access the hotel beaches, you're going to have to pay. So they're trying to sell us back, this access that should have been protected for the people, right? And what they're also doing is enshrining property, rights, property owners to have inherent rights to the foreshore, and nobody could basically make nice before their property, or when you're on the beach, that is. And they want to bring fishing beaches on our commercial licensing system. In Jamaica, we have common law protection of fishing beach. Is more to artisanal fishing communities that use the beach for wild food, sell some of it, but they want to commercialize these spaces. And of course, once you subject them to a licensor, then we have a problem. And the policy offer no new beaches. So, this is a picture that's showing the current Minister of Environment, right, who's also, the head of the environment at the United Nations. He's the head of the UNEA. He's pointing to some access corridor that they have created to this beach, that is on the north coast. And you can see the vendors sit on the sand, the big hotel in the background. And this is the policy that the government is trying to promote, highly discriminatory. So just, as Nicholas pointed out, we are a movement. We're not an NGO. We move flexibly and we ingrain ourselves within all communities. And we're fighting and pushing back against this. I just, in the interest of time, want to jump through here. We're using what is called the Prescriptive Act of 1882, which is a policy that actually allow us, if you have been using a track, a roadway, a lane to access the beach for a minimum of 20 years without any disturbance, you could go to the court to seek redress to continue to use that. And that is what JABEM is using right now, along with, just agitation and education, right? We're using legal advocacy to reclaim, our rights to these beaches. So we have 5 of these cases in the court. We have another 14 cases. We're restricted by funding as to how many we could move, but we, we're trying to get there. Right. And so that's where, the movement is at in terms of how we advocate. Just quickly showing you a couple of the beaches that, we're fighting for. This is very special to myself being a Rastafari. This is the site of the first Rastafari tabernacle that was built. It's Bob Marley Beach. And the government wants to seize these land. They have already transferred 250 acres to a private developer. So we have a case trying to fight to protect this space. This is the Blue Lagoon, another space that, coming to use for many years. We have been displaced from it. No vendors can operate here. This is controlled by, some of the richest Jamaicans trying to displace the country. This is one of my childhood beach that we were displaced from. The security guards were there, the police, the military comes in. Despite our protests, they put up, a concrete wall that blocks the community out. Here is Little Dunsray, one of the last, point at which the sea interacts with a river that our people use. We have this in court and we're fighting against that. And then this last one I want to show you here is in Montego Bay, that is really losing most of the beaches to the hotel industry. There's one last beach down there that we're fighting for, that a company wants to build an overwater bungalow. And I'll just show you a quick picture of what they're trying to do here. They're trying to now appropriate the sea. So they're projecting to build, there are like 3 of these overwater bungalow in Jamaica. And this is a fishing channel that fishermen uses. And now they want to drop their overwater bungalow in the middle of the channel and to block the community. And so what we have done, we have filed a legal case for this sea channel, as well as filing a case for the tracks and roadway over the land to protect the community's rights to the beach. But what they're doing in the artificial beach situation, they're actually ripping out the coastline that is supposed to protect the land from high energy waves, right? And tides that are coming in these space. What they're doing is they are ripping out rock face to create these swimming pool. And then these are the artificial beaches. They're saying we will divest them, right, to private owners. So they are making property out of water and blocking us out. And so this is something that, we are up against. This is endangering species. They don't care about the ecology that is in the water. These are some, known endangered species that was found to be present in this area, and they're going to take them out. Sorry to jump in through, but just kind of show you some of these overwater bungalows. There are no regulation in Jamaica that regulates them at all, only a guideline, and the guideline was written by the hotelier, right? Actually, that was developed in conjunction with Sandals. I mean, they're the one that work with the government to develop this legislation that is now this guideline that is now really creating the overwater bungalow expansion in the country, and it's just continuing all across the country. They are allowed to be built on watershed. This is a development that is ongoing in Jamaica right now. 1,200 acres of mangrove wetland, and they're going to build out on there. The proliferation of overwater bungalow is continuing across the island. So what we are asking for is to repeal this policy and rezone the coastline. We're asking that all these coastal land become basically public land. We are pushing for constitutional changes and development of land trusts, and that's something that as we continue the campaign continue to grow. So we have started now an annual gathering. We had one last year. These are some of our coastal defenders who are pretty much in the fight. They're all from the communities, and this is how we are mobilizing in Jamaica to really push back at how the coastline is being further ripped from us. So we ask the community of environmental defenders in different ways as to how they can engage. We have a website and our social media handles. Let's if you are spread the word, right, to really help us to get the message out there that Jamaica is not all right. We have massive problems there. So yeah, I'll leave it here and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Devon, for your presentation. I'm trying to find a qualifier, but I think the words defy a little bit what you have presented. I will, maybe just for the benefit of the audience, have followed your work and your advocacy for a couple of years now, and getting sort of maybe the firsthand context from you, I think still leaves me in a great deal of shock. Considering that I've been aware of your work for some time. So thank you very much. I would like to maybe highlight a couple of questions from the chat, and then if not, some of the moderators might have some other ones. But we have Dusan here in the chat. He writes, I understand that on Martinique and Overseas Department of France, a hotel controls its beaches for 6 days of the week. Only hotel staff and guests are allowed, and on Sundays, the beach is open to all. And I guess Dusan was wondering if you were aware if that's a common situation in other parts of the Caribbean. You might not be able to speak to that, but maybe it's
no. What I'm aware of in the English-speaking Caribbean, and I can attest for like Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Bahamas. These countries don't have the kind of laws that Jamaica have. You could actually find an easement, get on the beach, and you're allowed to walk along the foreshore and go into the water. I know many of the hotels that are operating in Jamaica are moving into these spaces, and they're pushing the boundary, trying to get these governments really to allow them to have private beaches, because it is not, the beach laws or the foreshore in most of these Caribbean countries are kind of derivative of the plantation economy. And they are not really enshrined as land trusts for the people. So the private developer can own the land down to the high water mark. They just can't own the wet sand. And until the Caribbean nation changes these kinds of policy and put all coastal land in trust, some government is going to come in and break that. They will allow privatization of the coastline because the laws are not yet as strong.
Thank you for that. Hannah here is asking, So she says, thank you for your incredible and eye-opening talk. She says, and this is a question I had, are you able to talk a little bit about the strategies that JABM has used that are effective? You've talked about court cases, you've talked about other approaches. I'm curious whether you had aspects of that were more successful than others. And I might add a qualifier to that question. I'm curious how your work is received in community and the communities around you, or whether there's resistance to what you are trying to do. Sorry, two-part question.
Yeah, I mean, so while we can share the strategies that we have been using so far and the ones that we're developing, we won't share them, but the legal strategy, right, of anchoring dispossession, or the attempt at dispossession in the court. So whenever a developer comes in and identify or the government sells a piece of land on the coast or a private person to build a hotel where people were using these tracks and roadways, we immediately move in and we file a case in the court and kind of hold it up until the court resolve the issue. And we have really been expanding on that since JABM came about, 3 years ago. So we have not, these cases are still ongoing. No, none of them has been decided upon, right? So they allow us to maintain access, except in one case, right? Which is the Mami Bay case, which the state came out with the military and the police force. And the reason we got kicked off of that, it's that, one of the developers in that court case is actually a member of the government of Jamaica, and so it's a corrupt case, that we're fighting. One of the other strategy is that we only use members from community to fight for community. There's no one from another community or any intellectuals that goes in and say, I'm leading the community's effort. No, we use a strategy where we identify someone from the affected community to lead the fight, and then we collaborate. So what we're stitching together across the entire country are grassroots advocates who have experienced the dispossession to lead the fight. And so, we have 20 of those members as part of our movement, and we're growing the list. So our strategy is not to take the strategy that sometimes you have NGO takes where, some academic or some policy person or some person who think that they knows are trained to come in and do this. No, these are grassroots people, who we used to do this kind of a work. Your last question was, again, I'm not remembering the last part of your question.
I think you answered it. I was just kind of curious as to sort of how your work is supported within those communities. But I think presumably by having a local advocate that builds that support.
Yeah, we use a lot of local media too. We use a lot of we have very good environmental defender and local station, IRA FM, Kabu Mahat Karu. She gives us airtime and we really go in and deal with it. So much as the talk shows that we can get on, we engage them. We are very engaging of the government. Everything that they put out, we counteract it, with press releases, and just mobilize other NGO. We have a cluster of NGO called the Advocates Network in Jamaica, where many of the civil society will really converge, and we use those spaces in order to kind of broaden the message across the island as well.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I think we're out of time. There's a couple more questions in the chat. If Devon, you wanted to type in there after we are going on to the next speaker. I really appreciate you so much for taking the time and talking about your work. It is inspiring, and I will say that the type of work and the kind of work you are doing would fit very well with the ethos of the Ecology Action Center where I'm based. So I look forward to learning some more lessons from your work, and thank you for your contribution to this issue. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you.